All right, you guys, I want to welcome you to the Quality of Life and Recovery podcast, where we meet each month to discuss topics related to improving your quality of life. And the Quality of Life and Recovery podcast is moderated by your very own mindful moderator, Jimmy, the experiential one. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm saying thank you because I'm going to add some applause. Yes. And we meet here each month to discuss all topics, all things related to improving your quality of life. And topics that come from for the Quality of Life and Recovery podcast are coming from the Valued Living Questionnaire. That's the Valued Living Questionnaire. Um, 10 different life topics, life categories. If you're interested in taking that questionnaire, let me know. And for the year of 2025, the theme here at the Quality of Life and Recovery Center is value living. And that comes from a concept in sales and marketing called customer lifetime value. And did I say value living? The theme is actually li- the theme is actually lifetime value. Let me take that back. It's lifetime value. And that comes from a topic in sales and marketing called customer lifetime value. I had to abbreviate it because I don't have many customers. Uh, and so it is lifetime value. And so for the whole year, we're going to explore all things related to improving quality of life across the lifespan. So whether you're 10, 40 years old, or 80 years old, these topics that we discuss are probably important to you, are probably of value to you. And so for the month of March, the quality of life category is rightly relating to oneself, other people, and the rest of the world. Rightly is the word I'm trying to say, relating to oneself, other people, and the rest of the world. And actually, on the questionnaire, the category is marriage, intimate relationship, and couples. And so I got my druthers about that particular topic. So I revised it and just made it about, the things that people need to do to create a relationship with yourself first, because I think that's where we need to start. And then we can work on rightly relating to other people. And then I have some concerns about just how people, and I'm going to just put it out there, Black people, African Americans specifically, are viewed in the world. And so each month I try and have a very, very special guest. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest here tonight. And I want you guys to help me welcome Goddess Z. Now, before we welcome her, I want to give her biography. It says here Goddess Z is a Reiki master, the Qigong instructor. Am I pronouncing that right? If- uh, and a meditation facilitator and intuitive energy healer with over 20 years of dedicated practice. Her journey into the spiritual realm began at a very young age. Driven by a strong connection to her ancestors and their wisdom, she later went on to healing of generational trauma and spiritual development. Throughout her journey, Goddess Z has guided countless individuals toward achieving deeper self-awareness and empowerment by transforming personal traumas into sources of strength. Goddess Z is the host of the Holistic and Spiritual AF podcast. Y'all know what AF means. Author of the Five Stages of Shadow Work, Ancestral Altar Guide, and How to Use and Create an Altar to Honor Your Ancestors. Goddess Z offers spiritual consultations and holds classes for the collective, helping to raise the consciousness and frequency of the chosen ones. You guys help me to welcome Goddess Z to the Quality of Life and Recovery podcast.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, first and foremost, for having me, Jimmy, the experiential one. I think that's the first time I've ever met you as that. I know you as James. So thank you so much for having me. I mean, I love what you're doing here. I love that intro and what you've got planned for the rest of the year. It sounds really exciting, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you, Goddess Z. And I'm really glad that you're here. I feel like your practice, what you do, definitely relates to um, creating a relationship with yourself and the rest of the world. And so I guess I want to start with now I normally start with how I met the person that I have as my special guest, but we met in a book club studying, right? And
Yeah.
so, but I do want to ask you, go back a little bit in the bio and just ask you, when did you feel like you had this special connection? When did you like, what was that process like when you realized you were one of the chosen ones?
Oh, I like that question. You know, it's always interesting to get the question because it comes out different every time. And first and foremost, I'm going to say that chosen ones choose themselves first. So I like to say that because a lot of times people are like, oh, why is this one chosen and not that one? You could be chosen if you choose to be chose, you know? So for me, I've talked about my experience a lot on my podcast, Holistic and Spiritual AF. And things started for me as a young child, but I didn't recognize it. So I was having these experiences with my ancestors at that time. I was young, I was very introverted. There was a lot going on in my household, a lot of trauma and things that I grew up with. And so I became very sheltered. And I had these friends, you know, I had these confidants, these buddies, these spirits, you know, that walked with me, talked with me, were a part of everyday life that I trusted. And I would have these telepathic communications with them where I learned to speak to them without opening my mouth, you know, when we would have two-way conversations. So at that time, I didn't really try to identify what it was. It just was. And I continued basically my entire life like that. You know, they were always there, you know, in my household. There wasn't any talk about intuition and spirits and ancestors and none of that. Actually, I came from a really strict religious background, so that was a no-no. That was a taboo subject. But I remember asking questions, always being intrigued by what happened to the soul after we died at like 7 years old. I was always deep and intrinsic. I was always into metaphysics, outer space, you know, things like that excited me. I always liked any kind of magic shows or like anything that had witches and like potions and all of these different things. And all of that stuff is stuff we weren't supposed to be doing, you know? So I would
Right.
sneak and do it because it just felt like, it just felt like, why not? You know, like I wanted to know why not. I was always inquisitive, always a seeker. And so I was going to do what you told me not to do. And so I kind of did my time going to these Bible studies. And I'm grateful for that today because I came back around to the metaphysical side of the Bible later on. So, you know, I'm still learning a lot. And when I'm breaking those things down, I'm grateful today for that heavy Bible practice and study I grew up with. It's all interconnected. Everything happened for a reason. So yeah, I was always intrigued by that. And I continued on, and I would say it wasn't until you know, life was going off the deep end really fast for me early, like really early. Like by the time I was 21, I had both of my daughters, you know, and it just dawned on me like last week that I had my oldest daughter as a teenager. I was like, I was a teenage mom. Like I just got that. Like it never clicked until, you know, just like 2, 3 weeks ago. But yeah, so I had both of my daughters at 21 and I was struggling trying to survive. And, you know, I was just headed down a dark path. And I ended up being put in a position where I had a therapist and she suggested meditation and yoga to me. And so I was so grateful for that because that meditation, even those short period, a little pocket moments, it allowed me to get outside of my reality. And before that, I was using other things to get outside of my reality that were negative. So I was grateful for that. And it was a wrap after that. I was a seeker already. So I really just started studying everything and started jumping into like crystals and to metaphysics like right away. I started learning and applying things that I was learning, going to classes. going to workshops, watching videos, reading books, and that really just kind of opened my world up. And so around that time, I started learning about spirit guides, and nobody still was talking about ancestors, not in the community that I was in. I was still on the new age side of things. So that's when I started to correlate that there was these other beings and entities out there that we could communicate with. So it was much later on, the whole time, basically since that age of 21 on up until now, I was studying and taking classes and learning, and I feel like I'm going to skip a whole lot. Like I got onto the healing side. I got married. My girls were still young. My girls were like 3 and 5. So life simmered down quite a bit, you know. So life calmed way down because, like I said, I was headed off the deep end. So I got married, and he had cancer. I was young. He was a lot older than me, and I didn't really understand the full what that meant. He had terminal cancer at the time that I met him. So we were married for about 8 years, and he transitioned. And so that was extremely challenging. The grief process behind that was unexplainable. And I was young. This was like
Yeah.
right before I turned 30. So you take that coupled with the traumatic life that I grew up with, never really having getting any help for that. And it was a train wreck, on top of that grieving process. And so one of the things that I said that I would do, because I was actually just about to start getting into alternative ways of healing when he was on his last bout of chemo, because I felt like the chemo was killing him. And I was like, let me see if there's something we can do. Now, this was like in the early 2000s. And so at that time, it wasn't like it is now, where more people are receptive to that. And so after he transitioned, a month later, I went to massage therapy school. And I was so grateful for that, because the school that I went to was like half and half. Like half we taught like the fundamentals, the mechanicals, the body work, the anatomy, all of those things. And the other half we talked about energy work, Reiki, aromatherapy, all of this energetic side. It was called the Mind Body Institute. And I was so grateful for that, because I tapped into that, and it was like riding a bike. And little did I know it was what I needed, like tremendously. Like I needed to
Mhm.
start working on healing myself, but I also started tapping into my ability to help other people with energy healing. And I got a tremendous amount of practice with that, and working with healing guides and working with these different entities and abilities. And so I continued that for um, quite some time. I think I was a massage therapist for about 5 years, 5, 6 years. And so
Okay.
that was my world at that time. And I was like in the spiritual community. I was doing spiritual events. I was, popping up my chair for chair massage and all of those different things. And continued studying all along the way. And then somewhere um, after that, about 5, 6 years after that, I started being called to my African roots. Like something inside of me was saying, you got to get in touch with your African roots. You got to get in touch with your African roots. And I kept hearing that. And I was like, what does that mean? How? Like I didn't know anybody around me. And like I said, my family definitely was not the one to ask. And but I was a seeker, and I just happened to come about this festival, that threw me right in it. That threw me right in. It was like a traditional African spiritual festival, and that's kind of how I tapped into the ancestral side of things and the African spirituality side of things, and that just really expanded my world beyond anything that I could imagine. And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, it was my ancestors all along. So that was like the first time. I know that was a mouthful right there, but that was like the first time once I tapped into that, probably like 10 years. Yeah, 10 years after I started the journey. But I think it all had to happen like it did, because I needed
Mm.
to get that healing for myself first before I started to move into some other topics. And so I don't know if there was ever a moment that I said, hey, I'm a chosen one, as much as it's something that I just came to be. I evolved into understanding more my purpose and
Mm.
why I went through what I went through, and started accessing and opening up different codes in my DNA that told me that, hey, this is what you came here for. You're one of the ones to help other people. And my path, a big part of my path is a facilitator of healing. I say that all the time. Um, And so that's definitely what I'm here for, especially where we are now on the planet. Like people are waking up and people are reaching for things and they're tapping more into their spirit world and spirit realm. And I feel like I was prepping all along to get to this place to be able to help other people. And that's what I'm doing now. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you gave me a lot. I got a ton of more questions, but that's what I needed. So thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
so they are saying, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but they're saying like this is the first time in human history where so many people are aware of the meditative, I call it contemporary contemplative practices,
Hmm.
where the discussion, this is the first time in human history where like people are open to the discussion about like mental health and alternative forms of healing, which I find really odd because now we have the highest rate. We also have the highest rate of physical health and mental health
Mm.
challenges, known to man. So I'm like, well, why, if everybody is waking up, why are the rates, still going up for people? And so this, whole topic is all about creating relationship, right? Relationship building. And so the relationship that you've established with your ancestors, so it's basically just like family, right? And
Hmm.
so when they reach out to you or when they give you guidance, how does it show up?
Oh, all kinds of ways. Like I said, we're tight now. Like I've known them longer than anybody else on the planet. Like I've known them as long as I've known my mother, and then I knew them before I came here. So we have a very close relationship, and I have different types of ancestors for different things. So the ones that walk with me every day, they show up just like whenever, and they show up by helping me with different things, helping with guidance, helping with everyday things. There's a parking spot right there, or it could be helping me in certain situations in life. I have higher ascended ancestors that when I'm going through something deep, that is maybe some shadow work that's going to push me towards transformation, like this is a pivotal point in your life, those will come down and assist me with that. Whether I may be going through some pain as a result of the change, and they will assist me to help me get to the other side, helping have more clarity and having that deeper, more esoteric understanding of it. I've got healing guides, that when I work with other people with energy healing, they've taught me. The ways to do things properly, how to protect, how to clear, how not to put my energy on somebody, how not to take somebody else's, how not to try to force my will in the actual healing process on someone else. So they've taught me all about that. Like they just work for that function. And then, of course, sometimes I use divination. So like tarot cards. Most of the stuff that do now is like intuitive. It just kind of comes to me in downloads. But if I do use tarot cards because something's going on that I don't want to happen and I don't want to see the truth, I don't want to see it as it is. And my ancestors may be telling me, but I don't want to hear that. I want something else. So I'll try to throw the cards, which the cards are going to tell me the same thing. So I have ancestors that have helped me with that. They've helped me to be able to use those tools properly, and understand them properly. But essentially, pretty much everything comes from inside first, and nothing is forcing me to do anything or telling me what to do because it is my life and my journey. So my ancestors are always to guide. They're just assisting in this journey of life to try to make things easier for me, to help me along this process because that's what everybody on earth is here for, is we're here to grow and evolve spiritually. Uh-oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, I'm muted and I'm just
Yeah.
talking. Thank you. Uh,
I was like, what happened? It got quiet.
yeah. So I would now. I was raised religiously too, and I still, I still consider myself, the product of the Church of God in Christ, right? And so I want to know if it's that thing, the way that I was raised. When I hear the word divination, I
Hmm.
automatically get like this joke, like,
I
so,
know.
but the divine, there is nothing, well, I guess there is something intimidating about the word, about the divine, right? But where do you think that comes from? Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to ask you too, got a Z. You said that we're tight now. You know, I'm tight with the ancestors now. So was there a period of resistance for you? So you got two questions in one.
Sure. I'll start with that second question first and the other one next because it's loaded. So there was a point in time when I just didn't listen. That I wouldn't say that I was gonna do what I wanted to do. I didn't trust. I wasn't open and receptive. I was just kind of hell bent on rushing, living the life. And so I would be getting all these signs and these guidance, and I just would completely, ignore it, or I would be suggested something and I'm like, no, I'm gonna go this way instead. I have such a relationship with them today, and they've helped me so much with so much, to even get to this place and this point. Now, when something is suggested, I'm obedient. I do it, So that's what I mean. It's like starting my podcast. They were like, start your podcast. I was just like out of the blue, and I'm like, where did that come from? And I'm like, okay, and all sorts of amazing things have come out of it. So I'm obedient today. I listen because I know that any guidance that they're given is only for my help and my benefit, never to cause any harm. And that's universal law. And as far as the other question, oh, I love this one. I actually have a few people that I've had on the podcast that talk about the topic of deconstructing religion. Because with religion, and I think you're muted again, with religion, there's a lot of fear-based teachings. That just tell people to stay away from stuff. It's demonic. It's this witchcraft. It's sorcery, when in actuality, all throughout the Bible is talks about crystals. It's talks about, there's actually a scripture in the Bible somewhere in the Old Testament. Maybe somebody listening can find this for me because I'm not that versed on the Bible, that talks about God raising an army of the dead to help a character in the Bible fight. And I was like,
Okay.
whoa, like, yes, yes, like what? That's exciting. I'm like, if we had been talking about this, I may have paid more attention. Or
Mhm.
potentially, if we're talking about Revelation, there's a lot talking about the beast. There's a lot of metaphysical truth that's in the Bible, but most churches kind of focus on one part. And when it comes to these things that are to help you have your own spiritual experience, that's kind of shunned against or just not talked about at all. So there's a lot of people, like you said, on the planet right now who are waking up to exploring more deeper spiritual experiences, whether they come from the church or some other sort of religious background. And so there's quite a few people out there right now having that conversation about deconstructing religion. And it takes time. It really takes time to kind of break down some of those things. And in my circumstance, coming from a religious background and talking about tarot, that was even a thing for me. I was like, oh, I can't say tarot, like, oh, they'll cut me off.
Right.
And some people, that has happened for some people where they have been shunned against from their family, and people are concerned about that. They're concerned about having their family and their community turn their back on them and call them names and not having that community structure
Yeah.
of church. But there's also some pastors and teachers out there who are talking about, that are combining both
Okay.
the Bible, Christianity, as well as having these other types of experiences and incorporating things like meditation and yoga, and being allowed to have these experiences for yourself, and recognize that it's nothing to be afraid of. And a lot of it you'll find inside of the Bible. That's the thing. If I would challenge people to actually read their Bible, but read it from a metaphorical standpoint
Mhm.
and not such a literal standpoint, and it would be a much deeper experience for them. It's not something that happens overnight, though, for sure. It takes time.
Yeah. Process.
Yes.
It's a process, right? Yeah, I did want to tell you too that this whole thing, the Quality of Life and Recovery podcast and me going into life coaching, I think was for me ancestral guidance
Hmm.
because I lost my grandfather in
Hmm.
2020. I call him my co-founder, actually. And so, but he was, a marketer, a small business owner. He really believed in like entrepreneurship
I love it.
He had his own radio show, had his own TV show, and he used to ask me questions because I was like one of the first, well, I'm a first generation college graduate, right?
Okay.
And so it just blew his mind that I graduated college and I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. He just could not
Mm,
understand that.
I
And
love that.
so, yeah, and so when he passed away, I felt like this, being upfront and, being seen and being heard would keep his legacy alive because
Yes.
that's very much who he was. That's not who I am. So,
That's
uh,
beautiful.
thank you. Thank you. That's my little take on ancestral guidance. So with the other thing I wanted to talk about too,
Well,
though,
stop. Before we
yeah,
go there, I
yeah,
want to talk about Granddad a little bit. First of all, what was his name?
Claude Edwards,
Claude
senior.
Edwards,
Yeah.
Sr. Yes, that's very
Hmm.
powerful. And I very much think that your what you're doing right now is definitely keeping his legacy, his energy, his spirit alive. And something that we say in the ancestral world is we never say passed away or died because we say transitioned. So basically
Okay.
transitioned from this life, this world, into another, the spirit realm. And, some people say
Yes.
heaven, wherever they go, they don't die. So they
Yes.
only die if we forget them and we don't talk about them, we don't remember them, we don't do things like this. So I think very much his spirit lives through you. And if you feel like you were inspired by your grandfather to do that, then yes. I always say that whether we know it or not, our ancestors are walking with us and helping us, even if we're not making that conscious, connection with them, they're still guiding us anyway. Sorry, I just
Yeah.
had to put that in there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Because I talked to you about the state of my life today. I gave you a little bit of that yesterday. And so you have a lot of different resources. And then you do your thing professionally too. You have a completely different professional job that's way separate from what you do from your purpose and your calling. So how do you blend, how do you merge, how do you turn, the spiritual, the seeking Z on, and then the professional, how do you go about balancing it?
I love that question too. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
So marketing was actually something that my ancestors pushed me to do. So when
Okay.
I was doing the massage therapy, my world was all spirituality. Everything I did, morning, noon, night, that's all I did. That was my life. But the issue that I had was making money. I was struggling to make money as a massage therapist and doing spiritual work, and I
Okay.
really had prosperity mindset issues with charging people and people, giving people like bartering and stuff like that. And that just don't pay the bills. And I had two children and I found myself getting resentful when I was supposed to be doing spiritual work. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I was like, I want to have a job where I just make money. And then I want to do the spiritual stuff because that's my purpose and what I want to do.
Okay.
And so I decided I'm going to be a realtor. Like I was like, I want to make a lot of money. Like that's all I had. Like, is this elementary idea? And I went on to be a realtor for about 5 years, and I did not do very well with that. And I completely turned my back to spiritual thing. I began to do the opposite, and I started chasing
Okay.
money. But what I found in marketing, real estate, there's a lot of marketing. You got to market yourself, and get stuff out there. So I started doing a lot of that on my own because I couldn't afford to get anybody else to do it. And I liked it. I started getting good with it, doing those things. And so my ancestors was like, this is something that you will use, like continue to do this. And so I started to veer more towards marketing and I kind of just left the real estate to the side and I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I started on that path of that. And I got the message wrong because I thought that my purpose was to help to do marketing and then to teach businesses at one point, and then that evolved into helping spiritual coaches and teachers. And my ancestors was like, "You're getting it all wrong." They kept saying to me, "This is for you." So a lot of times they'll give clues. They don't just tell you exactly point A, but you're supposed to figure it out on your own. So
Mm.
they would tell me, "You're getting it all wrong. This is for you. This is for you." And I kept saying, "Yeah, this is my purpose." And so I was trying to do this. I made like hardly no money doing that at all. And I couldn't understand, like, how'd I miss the message? Like, and so I ended up getting like the job in IT. Everything happens for a reason. I got a job in
Mhm.
IT. I was good at it, and that allowed me to pay my bills and stuff while I was trying to figure this marketing thing out.
Okay.
And so I continued that on until about 2 years ago. Most of the jobs, I kept trying to get a job in marketing. Mind you, I had kind of set the put the spiritual stuff on the back burner now for a couple of years because I was chasing money. And so I finally got to the point where I was like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with this marketing. Let me try to get a job in this marketing. And everybody kept telling me, you got to have a bachelor's degree. You got to have a bachelor's degree. I was freelancing. I'm like, I can't get in, all this stuff. So then, anyway, my spirit comes back to, you're all out of alignment here. You're all out of whack. Your life is not going in any direction because you're off track and you're off purpose. And I started working on myself. And I started tapping back into going back to the basics, the things that I knew, how it all started for me: meditation, yoga, getting tapped back into tea, the way that I eat, all of these things kind of allowing me to receive the messages properly. So about 2 years ago, I went into a marketing agency and I got a job. And I was like, wow, like I thought I had to have a bachelor's degree. But by that point, I had so much experience. They were like, you got enough experience as a bachelor's degree. And so I was like, wow, that's great. And then I started, working there, and that was a highly stressful job, and it was crazy, and it was like pulling me outside. I was trying to do this and trying to do the spirituality. My ancestors said, you got to let this job go. They was like,
Oh
this job
wow.
is stressing you. They were like, you got to do it right now, or you're going to miss the window of opportunity. And that's all I
Mhm.
got. And so I knew I had to stop. I stopped working that job for about 2 months, couldn't find another job, and I was still working, but I was really on point with all my spiritual stuff again. I was really plugged in. The book came out, all kinds of different stuff, and I got another job in marketing, the job that I have now, and it was making more money, working from home, lots less stressful. And I made that vow that this is the job, okay? And it's going to help to fuel the marketing stuff that I do now with the podcast, with the classes, with all of this. So coming back around full circle, when my ancestors kept telling me, this is for you, this is for you, that's what they meant. The marketing is for you to have the understanding to be able to market it for your spiritual business, not to go teaching other people that, but to teach people the spiritual aspects. And so that's how it be sometimes. Like, you gotta live the journey. It doesn't come out like just telling you exactly how it's gonna be. And I make that at 5 o'clock. I turn that I clock out and I'm out. I don't do that stuff I used to do at that other job. My work-life balance is extremely important because I have to keep my spiritual body fortified first. And it
Yeah.
all works. It's balanced like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Work-life balance for sure. Burnout is real, especially
It
when it comes
is.
to this creative thing. I'm like, wow, I love it, but I'm tired, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's important. Okay. Um, God Z, thank you for talking about your book. Because I did want to ask you about those. And so, are these two different books? The 5 stages of shadow work, and then the
Yes.
ancestral altar guide, how to use and create an altar to honor your ancestors. And so,
Yes.
you want to tell us a little bit about the 5 stages of shadow work?
Sure. The 5 stages of shadow work kind of really goes into the shadow parts of ourselves, which
Okay.
it talks about like more transformational forms of healing. And sometimes when repetitive patterns pop up in our lives, maybe we keep choosing the wrong partner, or maybe we keep, choosing the wrong job, or we're choosing money over spirituality, whatever it is for us, whether it's some inner child stuff, it's going to be specific and unique for you. There's 5 stages to it. And so we talk about things like recognition and acknowledgement. First of all, recognizing that, hey, I got to do something different. You got to get to that point first. Because if not, you're like, everything's fine. There's nothing wrong with me. But when you get to a point where you feel like, I got to change something about myself, like I really need to start working on this, looking at this, where did this come from? And start really kind of getting to the root of it, pretty much everything goes back to childhood. And then you start to kind of pinpoint these areas, these deeper aspects of ourselves that need to be healed. So there's things like recognition and acknowledgement. There is things that talk about basically coming to that understanding of where it came from, recognizing that, oh, this is a pattern that I've carried with me since childhood. And then I went into survival mode and using these in different ways. And now I recognize that I know better now. So instead of like being hard on ourselves, we recognize and have compassion for ourselves. And then we start to kind of correct those patterns by different behaviors, different types of practices that we start to incorporate into our lives to get to the other side of that and recognize that that is a part of us, so that shadow part isn't to be shunned away but to be integrated,
Mhm.
to recognize that that's a part of who you are to make you who you are on the other
Yeah.
side. And then recognizing that sometimes when that shadow part may come out again, it's not
Mhm.
a one and done type thing. It definitely is a process as well that takes time, that can take weeks, days, years even to begin to work on that. So that's what the 5 stages of shadow work is about. I wish I had pulled it up. I don't have a book with me, but yeah, that's what we're talking about. So finally, you get to the point of transformation and healing.
So that's what you're doing in the work that you do with other people. You show them how to integrate the shadow, how not to be ashamed of the shadow, acknowledge the shadow. Is that what
So
is
the
done
work
in
that
shadow
I
work?
do, um, well, so it not necessarily. It
No?
really
Okay.
depends. Like that's kind of part of being an intuitive energy healer. I really work with the energy body of the person. So a lot of times a person will come to me and something, we'll have a conversation. They'll talk to me about what's going on
Mhm.
and utilizing my intuitive mediumship. Really, that's what I'm starting to realize is like mediumship as well as channeling abilities. I'm able to kind of get down a little deeper to what's really going on. And so I can ask certain kinds of questions that bring stuff up for them. And then I can give them applicable practices that they can start to work on healing themselves, and that journey in itself is going to take them in different directions. So I don't get too involved with the prescription of a person's path and journey. I just kind of, light the fire and send them on their way because that
Okay.
I like them to have their own experience. It takes them in some amazing places, and that's the way it should be. Their ancestors will work with them, their spirit guides, God will work with them.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so my energy work kind of just helps to shift their energy to be able to be receptive to whatever's necessary for them.
Wow. Oh, that's good. That's good. They gave me a lot of information about shadow work because I've always had my questions. Okay, so with the other book, the Ancestral Altar Guide: How to Use and Create an Altar to Honor Your Ancestors. This is a loaded question too. And so, do I have to have an altar to have a right relationship or to be able to establish contact with my ancestors, or does that just by having altered does that just improve the connection?
That's a great question, actually. So no, you do not have to.
Okay.
Everything starts with intention. But
Gotcha,
if
gotcha.
you are trying to build a relationship with your ancestors and you want to have something that you can be able to kind of come to on a daily basis, or definitely you want to frequently, at least weekly, come
Mm,
to and start to kind of build the energy of beginning to connect with them.
okay.
So if you just want to connect with your ancestors, just the acknowledgement and the intention of that is a start.
Mm,
And a lot of people already do, whether they realize it or not. And the best way to do that is to just start asking people in your family, start asking the elders in your family. They may start out with oh, I don't know, or oh, I forgot, that was a long time ago, and that a lot of times discourages our people. But you got to realize nobody's been asking these questions in our family unless you have a genealogist somewhere in there that's been tracing all of this stuff. But what I found with my grandmother was when I first started asking her, she seemed like she didn't care. My mother, the same. And over time, what I started doing was activating in her her remembering her ancestors. And she can give me stories nobody else can. And I'm like a little kid when I'm around my grandmother. I'm just sitting there. I want to hear all them stories, all the stories, not just the struggle stories, but who we were and how we lived as people around the house and the jobs that we had and the sense of humor and personality styles that we had, what we were good at. Like you were talking about your grandfather being the entrepreneur, those things are inside of our DNA that we have access to, and we can actually use them in this lifetime in our day-to-day life, Like, you want to be an entrepreneur, call on Claude. He know everything about it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, if I could just be, if I could be enough of like if I could be the pinky of the man that he was,
Oh.
I would just be, the world would be. He was just any room he walked into, he was just he was just that person. He wasn't really like loud and authoritative or boisterous, but I do think, it was, the hand of God on his life, the influence
Mhm.
in his life, number one. But man, I just miss him. I miss him so much, and so thank you for giving me the okay to interact with him. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, Goddess Z, you did take the valued living questionnaire. Thank you so very much. Uh, and I've been able to add you to my email list.
Uh-oh.
So I think you only scored low in a couple of areas. Um, you scored above a five in most, in most areas. You scored eight, 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 nine, 10, 8. And then we get to work. I think you already answered this.
Yep.
When you answered this question, because you was like, at 5 o'clock, I'm done. I leave,
Mhm.
so the work life balancing. Okay. And so we got that answer. And so the other thing was um, citizenship and community life. And so I feel like your purpose brings you into community, right? And so um, you scored a five there. Why the five and not an eight?
That's a good question too. I think I scored a 5 because up until very recently, like within, I guess, a couple of months since I've started having guests on the podcast, I had to be sheltered from mainstream society. I had to be because I'm empathic. I pick up a lot of things. A lot of people were not conscious and aware to what's happening on the planet, and it's too much to take on. So I've kind of was introverted. And my ancestors wanted it that way. They wanted me to not be um, uh what's the word, influenced
Okay.
by the things out there. So I kind of was just always like working on myself or learning more, and
Mhm.
that kind of kept my mind and my psyche kind of focused on spiritual pursuits and spiritual matters. But like you said, since doing the podcast and having the guests, what I'm starting to realize is that every person that I meet with, it is a soul to soul connection. These are not just random people out there on the planet. Some of these people I've just come across like on Instagram or social media somewhere, and usually those are
Okay.
superficial relationships. But I'm finding that these are deeper relationships, spirit to spirit, where these people are also doing this work and being called to
Yeah.
do this. So I see the community expanding. Like everybody's off doing their thing, whatever it is that they're doing: meditation, facilitation, somatic breathing, different types of things. But what I see is and I hear is, oh, you're going to build a community because one of the things that I want to do, I'm not sure when, but I definitely want to have some sort of a mindfulness type of summit and essentially retreats
Absolutely.
where I can bring
Yeah.
people together and different teachers, not just me running my mouth like I do, but offering that for these people who are looking for an alternative, just kind of how I started. I did a lot of retreats and stuff like that, and they were very beneficial for me and learning about these different paths and kind of picking what works for you and leaving the rest on the table type thing. So now I'm meeting people that I know are like, oh yeah, they're qualified. Yeah, they're doing the work. Yeah, they're the real deal. They're not just an influencer out here getting likes and selling stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just be, I listen to a number of different people on like YouTube, and so I'm finding out that the word influencer is like a bad word now. Like people are leaning toward creative creator. Uh,
Authenticity.
yeah, okay. So influencer is not authentic, and that's why people are
Let
is
me rephrase that.
okay.
So I don't want to get in trouble. Like have an influencer
Right,
come after me, right?
right.
But I wouldn't say that. My experience and encounter, it used to be, put it this way, before we got to the age of Aquarius, or 2025 being a 9 year, a
Yes,
transformation year.
yes.
Before we got here, let's say about 5 years ago, even before 2020, a whole lot has changed since 2020.
Mm,
Influencers were the thing. When you went on Instagram, it was all about how many followers you have, who's driving what kind of car. You had people with pictures that looked like they were photo shoots. It just didn't really resonate with the everyday person, at all. And you were looking up to these people like they must be doing better than me because of the stuff that they have, and
mhm.
we were really driven by materialism and material things. I got to get the house, I got to get the car, I got to go on the vacations. Whereas now, that we're moving into the age of Aquarius, people are more into, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
Like, why am I
Okay.
here? Like, we're more on the spiritual side of things, and we're getting back to the right order, the order of nature, the order of God,
Yeah.
which we were all about it at. And so now people are craving for authenticity. And that's what I find with my podcast. A lot of times I start with people's stories. People love that. They want to know how you came from hell to, to where you are today. And they like hearing
Yeah.
these stories about people who are like them, that are not like, oh, I've been doing this since I was 5. No, these people went through something. My story, I went through something. We had to navigate and heal through something. And they look at that like, well, shoot, you're not that far from me. I could do that too. And
Absolutely.
so, and they can hear that authenticity in a person who's willing to be raw, honest, and vulnerable about their story, and in order to help somebody else. So I think that's what we're looking for now, is we're craving authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to get any hate mail from any influencers either. So thank you for clearing that up. Uh,
If it doesn't
so
apply.
right. Um, so gotta see, I guess to wrap up, there was something else I wanted to ask you, but I do want to let let the listening audience know, if they want to contact you, if they want to follow the podcast, where can they find you?
Yes, yes. You can find me all over social media at Holistic and Spiritual AF. That's and spelled out. I'm everywhere. You can kind of Google me at this point. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Substack. I actually have writings over there. I write a lot about my personal story as well as different downloads that I receive. And I have some podcast episodes over there. YouTube. Definitely check me out on any of those places. Medium. And I think I'm gonna stop. Wait, Threads. That's it. I'm done with with all the social media. So I'm all over the place, and you can find me there. I don't know when this is going to be airing, but I do have a class coming up on March the 29th. That's a Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be a energy hygiene 101. So we're going to be talking about different ways to cleanse, clear, and protect your energy, particularly in the times that we're living in. I like to teach a lot of the foundational basics for people who are just getting started. These are long stays. No matter where you are on your spiritual journey, you can use these. So, and then of course my books are on Amazon, and Kindle for the ebook for the ancestral book. I think that's
Thank
everything.
you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you so much. And so you guys help me to thank Goddess Z for hanging out with us here tonight on the Quality of Life and Recovery podcast. Make
Thank
some
you.
noise. You're welcome. And before you go, Goddess Z, you can help me close it out. The way that I close most of the talks that I do is that I really, really strongly encourage people to be good to themselves, pour into you and love on you, because that way, if you are taking care of yourself and if you're kind and nurturing to you, you are going to be kind and nurturing to your neighbor. God knows that we need more compassion and care in the world. And so, Goddess Z, thank you so very much for hanging out with us. And see you guys next time. Have a good night.
Bye. Good night, everybody.